In the dim corridors of a high school where whispers carried the weight of unspoken prejudices, a new face appeared one crisp autumn morning. She was a young black girl, her skin a rich mahogany that seemed to absorb the fluorescent lights, making her stand out like a solitary flame in a sea of uniformity. The school, nestled in a predominantly white suburb, had long been a breeding ground for subtle divisions, where differences were not celebrated but scrutinized. As the days blurred into one another, the stares turned into murmurs, and the murmurs into something sharper. A group of students, led by a towering boy with a reputation for unchallenged dominance, began to circle her like predators sensing weakness. He was the kind of bully who thrived on fear, his actions fueled by a deep-seated resentment toward anyone who disrupted the familiar order. One afternoon, in the crowded gym where sweat and tension hung thick in the air, he decided to make his move. With a crowd gathering, their eyes hungry for spectacle, he lunged forward, his knee aimed squarely at her face. A brutal, unprovoked strike meant to humiliate and harm. The air crackled with anticipation as his leg sliced through the space between them. Time seemed to slow, the collective breath of the onlookers held in suspense. Would she crumple? Another victim in the endless cycle of intimidation? Or was there something hidden beneath her quiet demeanor, a force waiting to unleash? The impact never came as expected. In that split second, her body shifted with the precision of a shadow evading light, her eyes flashing with a resolve forged in fires far hotter than this petty confrontation. What the bully didn't know, what no one knew, was that this new girl carried secrets from a world of discipline and power, secrets that would turn his aggression into regret. The gym echoed with gasps as the tables turned, revealing not just a survivor, but a warrior. But how had she arrived at this moment? What invisible scars had led her here, and what storm of injustice was about to break? Aisha had always been a wanderer, not by choice but by circumstance. Born in a bustling city where diversity was the norm, she grew up in a modest apartment with her single mother, a nurse who worked endless shifts to keep them afloat. From a young age, Aisha found solace in the rhythmic thuds of gloves against pads at the local Muay Thai gym. It started as a way to channel her energy, but soon it became her sanctuary. Under the guidance of a grizzled trainer who saw potential in her quick feet and unyielding spirit, she honed her skills. By the time she was 16, she had claimed titles in regional tournaments, even traveling abroad to compete in Thailand, the birthplace of the art. There, amid the humid air and chanting crowds, she became a world junior champion, her name etched in the annals of the sport. But fame was fleeting. She kept her achievements private, a quiet armor against a world that often judged her first by her appearance. Circumstances changed when her mother's job transferred them to Elmwood, a quiet suburban town far from the urban pulse she knew. The move was meant to be a fresh start, away from the city's chaos, but Aisha sensed the undercurrents from the moment they arrived. The neighborhood lawns were impeccably manicured, the houses uniform in their pastel shades, and the stares from neighbors lingered a beat too long. At Elmwood High, the student body mirrored the town, mostly white, with a handful of minorities who navigated the halls like ghosts, avoiding eye contact to blend in. On her first day, Aisha felt the weight of being the new black girl. Teachers mispronounced her name, their smiles polite but distant. Classmates whispered as she passed, commenting on her braided hair or the way she carried herself with quiet confidence. It wasn't overt at first, just small exclusions, like groups closing ranks when she approached the lunch table, or snickers when she answered questions in class with insights drawn from her diverse upbringing. But beneath it all simmered a racial tension, rooted in the town's history of segregation echoes. Elmwood had once been sundown territory, and though laws had changed, attitudes lingered like old stains. Aisha tried to adapt, focusing on her studies and secret training sessions in the backyard. She didn't seek attention. Her Muay Thai background was a personal anchor, not a badge. Yet curiosity built around her. Who was this girl who didn't flinch at the isolation? Rumors spread. She was here on scholarship or escaping trouble back home. The bully, Jake, a senior with a football scholarship and a family tied to the town's old guard, took notice. His resentment stemmed from a fragile ego, amplified by the casual racism passed down in hushed family dinners. He saw Aisha as an intruder, someone who didn't belong in his school. Little acts of aggression began, bumping her shoulder in the hall, leaving anonymous notes in her locker with veiled threats. Aisha absorbed it all, her face a mask of calm, but inside the emotional toll mounted. Each slight chipped away at her resolve, reminding her of the systemic barriers black girls faced everywhere, from diminished opportunities to the constant need to prove worth. Still, she held back, hoping the storm would pass, unaware that Jake's simmering hatred was building toward an eruption that would force her hand. As weeks turned into months, the subtle undercurrents of prejudice at Elmwood High swelled into a relentless tide, pulling Aisha deeper into isolation. The school's facade of inclusivity cracked under the pressure of unspoken rules, where racial lines were drawn not with signs but with social exclusions. Aisha noticed how black students were disproportionately disciplined for minor infractions. A tardy slip for her became a detention, while others received warnings. In group projects, her ideas were dismissed, attributed later to white classmates as if she hadn't spoken. The emotional weight pressed on her chest like an invisible hand. Each day a battle to maintain dignity amid the erosion. Jake's group amplified the tension, their actions escalating from whispers to overt harassment. They trailed her after classes, mimicking her walk or making comments about her urban accent, code words for deeper biases. One afternoon in the library, a book was accidentally knocked from her hands, scattering pages across the floor while laughter echoed. Aisha knelt to gather them, her heart pounding with a mix of anger and hurt, but she rose without a word, her training teaching her that true strength lay in restraint. Yet the incidents accumulated, each one a brick in a wall of injustice that threatened to enclose her. The racial dynamics extended beyond school walls. In town, Aisha experienced the stares at the grocery store, where cashiers double-checked her mother's ID but waved through others. A local park incident, where police questioned her for simply sitting on a bench reading, highlighted the pervasive suspicion toward black bodies in spaces deemed not theirs. These experiences wove into her daily life, building a quiet rage. She confided in no one, but at night she replayed them in her mind, her fists clenching as she shadowboxed in her room. Muay Thai had always been her outlet, but now it felt like preparation for survival. At school, the bullying intensified. Jake, emboldened by his unchallenged status, began rallying others. During PE, balls were thrown harder her way, accidents that left bruises. The emotional stakes rose as Aisha's grades slipped slightly, her focus divided between academics and self-preservation. She overheard conversations in the locker room, slurs disguised as jokes, references to her as that girl who was taking spots from locals. It mirrored broader societal injustices. The way black women were often seen as threats rather than equals, their achievements downplayed or ignored. One pivotal week, the tension peaked. A school assembly on diversity felt hollow, with token speeches that ignored the real divides. Afterward, Jake cornered her in the hallway, his presence looming, but Aisha slipped away, her agility unnoticed. The curiosity among students grew. Some whispered sympathy, but fear kept them silent. Aisha's internal struggle deepened. She wanted to belong, to prove that race shouldn't define her worth, but the constant invalidation wore her down. Her mother's encouragement helped, drawing from her own stories of workplace discrimination, but it only heightened Aisha's sense of inherited burden. The rising pressure culminated in smaller confrontations. In the cafeteria, food was spilled on her tray, forcing her to eat alone outside. Each act chipped at her emotional armor, revealing the raw vulnerability beneath. Yet, it also steeled. Finally, the buildup reached a boiling point. Rumors spread of a prank planned for her, whispers of humiliation that would put her in her place. The air at school thickened with anticipation, students sensing an impending clash. Aisha felt it too, her senses heightened from years of training. The injustice had transformed her from a newcomer into a symbol of resistance, though she didn't seek the role. Tension hung like a storm cloud, ready to unleash as Jake plotted his final move, unaware of the force he was about to awaken. The gym after school hours was a cauldron of suppressed energy, the kind of place where rivalries simmered under the guise of casual gatherings. That fateful afternoon, a crowd had assembled, drawn by whispers of a confrontation. Jake stood at the center, his frame puffed with false bravado, surrounded by his followers who egged him on with nods and smirks. Aisha had been lured there under the pretense of a forgotten backpack, but she sensed the trap the moment she entered, the air thick with malice, the racial undercurrents now a roaring current. Jake's eyes locked on her, filled with a hatred born of ignorance and entitlement. He circled her slowly, his words unspoken but his intent clear in the curl of his lip, the clench of his fists. The crowd formed a loose ring, their presence amplifying the injustice, complicit in their silence. Aisha stood still, her breathing steady, drawing on the discipline of countless training sessions. In that moment, the emotional stakes crystallized. This wasn't just about her, but about every black girl who had been diminished, targeted for daring to exist in spaces not designed for them. With a sudden burst, Jake lunged, his knee driving upward toward her face, a vicious strike meant to end it quickly to assert dominance through violence. The move was telegraphed, fueled by arrogance rather than skill. Time dilated as Aisha's instincts took over. She pivoted seamlessly, her body a blur of practiced motion. Her elbow came down like a hammer, deflecting his leg midair with a crack that echoed through the gym. Jake stumbled, surprise flashing across his face, but he recovered, swinging a wild punch. Aisha ducked under it, her counter swift and precise, a low kick to his thigh that buckled his stance. The crowd gasped, the shift in power palpable. Jake roared internally, pressing forward with a flurry of sloppy attacks, each one rooted in his resentment, a manifestation of the racial prejudice that had festered unchecked. But Aisha was a storm incarnate. She weaved through his assaults, her strikes landing with surgical accuracy. A jab to the ribs that stole his breath, a knee to the midsection that doubled him over. The intensity peaked as Jake, desperate, grabbed for her, aiming to overpower through sheer size. Aisha twisted free, her clinch work from Muay Thai turning his momentum against him. She swept his leg, sending him crashing to the mat. He rose, face red with fury and humiliation, charging one last time. Aisha met him head-on, her roundhouse kick connecting with his guard, the force reverberating like thunder. He crumpled, the fight draining from him as pain and realization set in. In that climactic exchange, the gym transformed from a site of oppression to one of revelation. Aisha stood over him, not with triumph, but with a quiet authority that exposed the fragility of his bigotry. The crowd, once eager spectators, now shifted uncomfortably, the emotional weight of the moment forcing them to confront the injustice they had enabled. Aisha's victory was more than physical. It shattered the illusion of superiority, highlighting the deep-seated racism that had allowed such a confrontation to brew. As Jake lay there, defeated, the air hummed with the aftershocks of change. The climax not just a fight, but a turning point in the narrative of Prejudice. In the aftermath of the gym confrontation, the school buzzed with a newfound unease, the echoes of the event rippling through hallways like waves from a stone thrown into still water. Aisha walked away unscathed physically, but the emotional